The moment a fighter jet awakens, something profound happens inside the world's atmosphere. Air is squeezed until it changes shape. Metal tightens under pressure. Fuel turns into controlled violence. Heat, sound, and compression collide in a single instant, announcing that something powerful has come alive. This transformation is more than engineering. It is the beginning of movement, and movement, whether in nature or in national strategy, is the language of power. Whenever ignition happens, a jet declares its purpose, its identity, and the future it is meant to serve. Inside the Saab Gripen E, that declaration begins not on a runway or above the clouds, but deep within its core. Beneath its skin is the one element that defines how quickly it rises, how tightly it turns, how far it reaches, and ultimately, whether it survives when everything is at stake. The engine is not simply a machine. It is the heart that determines whether the aircraft is merely functional or truly free. And for a nation like Canada, whose air sovereignty stretches across frozen coasts, isolated communities, Arctic pressure systems, and a sky larger than most continents, that heart matters more than most people realize. The Gripen E is not an enormous aircraft. It was never intended to intimidate with size or mass. Instead, it was built to impress with intelligence, precision, and resilience. Every surface, every sensor, every internal module exists because it supports speed, access, or protection. The airframe is light and sharp, shaped by a philosophy that values survival and simplicity over excess. The result is a fighter that feels less like a machine and more like a tool forged for clarity of purpose. In an era where complexity often grows faster than capability, the Gripen E's elegance is almost radical. At the center of that elegance is the General Electric F400G engine, proven in combat, built in the United States, trusted across decades, designed to push modern fighters into the realm of supersonic performance while maintaining stability, smooth throttle transitions, and efficiency under stress. It is widely respected because it reacts instantly when a pilot needs it, because it endures punishment, because it was shaped by tens of thousands of operational hours. When a Gripen pilot pushes forward, the F414G answers without hesitation. This responsiveness gives the Gripen its signature traits: the ability to climb aggressively, to cut through dense air, to punch past the sound barrier with confidence, and to regain speed quickly after abrupt maneuvers. Even when carrying a full load of weapons, the aircraft avoids the sluggishness that burdens heavier fighters. In certain configurations, the engine even supports supercruise capability, allowing the jet to maintain supersonic speed without constant afterburner use. Less fuel burned, lower heat signature, more time in the fight. These traits matter more in real combat than the seductive but irrelevant idea of raw top speed. But behind that performance lies a chain. Because the F414G was built in the United States, it falls under ITAR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations. And ITAR is not just a formality. It is a geopolitical tool. One engine made in America gives Washington legal authority over where a Gripen can be sold, how it can be upgraded, and even what software may be integrated. A fighter jet is not merely a vehicle. It is a national instrument of power, and no country is comfortable when another nation holds the remote control. For many nations, including Canada, this is not a theoretical concern. It is a matter of sovereignty. Arctic patrols, NORAD commitments, continental defense, and global cooperation demand flexibility, independence, and the ability to make decisions without waiting for foreign permission. No government wants to spend billions on an aircraft only to discover that the most vital upgrades require approval from another capital. And it is here, right at this tension between performance and control, that a new idea began to take shape in Europe. What if the Gripen E could run on a fully European engine? What if Sweden, and every nation using the aircraft, could bypass American restrictions entirely? This question pushed engineers and strategists to consider a future in which the aircraft's heart no longer came from across the Atlantic. Conversations shifted toward the Eurojet family, the same lineage that powers the Eurofighter Typhoon with the EJ-200, a compact and remarkably efficient engine known for excellent thrust-to-weight performance and low fuel consumption. Out of this lineage emerged the proposed EJ-230. The concept was straightforward but bold. Take everything the EJ-200 does well: speed, responsiveness, efficiency, and push it further. More thrust. More forward power. More energy for high-altitude combat and sudden vertical maneuvers. And most importantly, shape it in a way that allows it to fit inside the Gripen E's airframe. On paper, the EJ-230 is stunning. Depending on configuration, it is estimated to produce between 102 and 120 kilonewtons of thrust. That places it squarely in the realm of, or above, the F-414G. More thrust means faster acceleration. Faster acceleration means higher survivability. Higher survivability becomes dominance. And dominance, for a nation responsible for the world's second-largest landmass, matters deeply. Canada is not worried about dogfighting over small borders. It is concerned with distance, endurance, and the ability to launch aircraft from short, icy runways and reach remote regions under harsh conditions. Energy is life in modern air combat, and the country that owns its energy owns its future. When European engineers proposed adding thrust vectoring, altering exhaust direction for extreme low-speed maneuverability, the potential grew even more dramatic. Gripen E could become one of the most agile fighters on the planet, performing moves that surprise opponents and break traditional assumptions. It would no longer sit comfortably within the 4.5 generation label. It would become something entirely different, a fusion of intelligence, control, and mechanical aggression. And yet, beyond performance, there is something far more powerful at stake: liberation from ITAR. A fully European engine means no American export restrictions, no foreign ministry approvals, no digital locks, no delays caused by international politics. A Gripen equipped with such an engine would give Canada a fighter it could customize, maintain, upgrade, and deploy on its own terms. That level of independence is not merely technical. It is strategic. It is national. It speaks to what kind of air power a country wants to own and who it wants to answer to. For Canada, the idea of operating a fighter without external restrictions is not an abstract preference. It is a question rooted in geography, responsibility, and history. A country that protects 3 oceans, monitors vast Arctic corridors, and partners in NORAD cannot afford delays caused by policy disagreements or export approvals. Canada needs an aircraft that responds not to another nation's legal framework, but to the demands of its own territory. And this is precisely where the vision of a European-powered Gripen E becomes more than a technical upgrade. It becomes a strategic alignment with the realities of the North. Gripen already embodies the philosophy of operating from remote locations, frozen surfaces, short runways, and minimal support crews. It was built for nations that cannot rely on massive bases or endless logistics. Adding a European engine strengthens that identity, turning the aircraft into not only a capable fighter, but a symbol of operational sovereignty. In this context, Canada emerges as one of the countries that would benefit the most from such independence. Yet before imagining what the Gripen E could become, it is important to understand what it would require. Replacing an engine is not like swapping a component in a civilian vehicle. Jet engines define how a fighter breathes, how it cools itself, how it balances its weight, and how its software interprets movement. Any deviation from expected airflow or heat distribution can disrupt the aircraft's stability. This means that integrating the EJ-230, or any alternative power plant, would demand a complete reevaluation of how air is pulled into the intakes, how temperature is controlled, and how the structure absorbs force. Airflow would need to be reanalyzed to ensure that the new engine receives the volume and pressure it requires at all altitudes. Cooling systems would have to be redesigned to handle different thermal patterns. Structural supports might need reinforcement or adjustment to align with the engine's mounting points. The flight control software would require extensive rewriting so the computer understands the behavior of the new engine. Even the weight distribution across the airframe would need recalculation to prevent instability during sharp turns, high-speed climbs, or emergency maneuvers. None of these steps are optional. They are essential. This is why such a transformation would take years of engineering, thousands of hours of ground testing, and hundreds of hours of flight experiments. The aircraft would need to be flown in hot air, cold air, thin air, dense air, low altitude, high altitude, with weapons loaded, with no weapons, with afterburners lit, with afterburners off, and even under simulated engine failure. Every possible scenario must be investigated because there is no tolerance for error in aviation, especially in a frontline fighter. This investment would not be small. The cost would reach at least several $100 million, potentially more depending on integration challenges. Development timelines for deliveries could slow temporarily. Export opportunities might pause until the new engine reached certification. These realities explain why the F-414G remains in place today. It is proven. It is understood. It works. And in a world where uncertainty is constant, reliability is attractive. But reliability is not the only metric that matters. Countries across the world are increasingly prioritizing autonomy, control over their defense systems, their upgrades, and their future. Nations that rely on foreign infrastructure or foreign permission risk unexpected limitations during moments of crisis. In the past decade, global events have made it clear that political landscapes can shift rapidly. A country that does not control its own military assets may find itself constrained at precisely the wrong moment. This is the deeper meaning behind the idea of replacing the Gripen's engine. It is not a commentary on American technology. The F-414G is a remarkable engine. It has earned its reputation. But as long as it remains inside the aircraft, the fighter's freedom is incomplete. Sweden understood this long before the Gripen E was conceived. Its entire aviation philosophy, from the Cold War to the present, was shaped by the desire to avoid dependence on larger powers. It built fighters that could launch from roads, be serviced by small teams, and take off again in 20 minutes or less. These were not luxuries. They were survival strategies. For Canada, the logic resonates. The country must operate aircraft across some of the world's harshest conditions. It must respond to sudden Arctic deployments, continental defense signals, NORAD alerts, and international commitments. It must defend a sky so large that few aircraft on Earth are designed for its scale. A fighter that can be refueled, rearmed, and relaunched quickly under snow, wind, and freezing temperatures is a direct match for Canadian reality. A European engine would not simply enhance performance. It would amplify a philosophy Canada already values: strength through independence. With such an engine, Gripen E users could integrate Canadian-made weapons, update software without foreign approval, and maintain supply chains domestically. It would allow the country to choose its path without navigating foreign export controls. For an ally that often finds itself balancing relationships with multiple global powers, this freedom would be invaluable. Even more compelling is what this means for the future of air power. Aviation is changing rapidly. Nations no longer focus on being the biggest or the fastest. They focus on endurance, flexibility, and the ability to adapt without asking permission. A Gripen E equipped with a European engine represents that shift. It stands for a world where medium-sized nations do not need to rely on superpower manufacturing monopolies to defend their skies. It reflects a movement toward a more balanced, cooperative defense landscape. Canada, with its history of innovation, from the legacy of the Avro Aero to modern aerospace manufacturing, understands the importance of technological self-determination. A fighter that aligns with those values, supports domestic integration, and respects Canadian autonomy would become more than a procurement choice. It would become a national asset and a signal to the world. This is why the concept continues to attract discussion. Engineers still analyze it. Strategists debate it. Analysts evaluate its impact. Because beyond metal and turbines, the idea represents something larger. A future where nations shape their own air power destiny instead of inheriting one designed elsewhere. And for Canada, a country defined not by its borders, but by the vastness of its sky. This vision carries profound meaning. As the discussion around a European engine continues, it becomes clear that this transformation is not just a matter of mechanical redesign, but a philosophical shift in how nations conceive their air defense responsibilities. Gripen E, even with its current American heart, already reflects a worldview centered on agility, efficiency, and sovereignty. But replacing the F-400G with an engine like the EJ-230 would push this worldview into a new era. An era where medium-sized nations, including Canada, could field fighters entirely aligned with their operational priorities, not the political boundaries of foreign manufacturers. When considering such a change, one must imagine the broader strategic implications. A Canada operating a Gripen E powered by a European engine would not simply own a capable aircraft. It would own a tool designed for independence. That independence would influence how Canada approaches NORAD obligations, Arctic patrol schedules, fleet management, and future upgrades. It would also shape how Canada works with NATO allies, offering a platform free from ITAR limitations and flexible enough to integrate European or domestic technologies as global conditions evolve. Such flexibility is not trivial. In a world defined by shifting alliances and rapid technological change, countries benefit from systems that can be adapted at any time. A fully sovereign Gripen E would allow Canada to integrate new weapons, modify software, or adopt emerging electronic warfare suites without requiring foreign approval. This freedom would encourage innovation within Canada's aerospace sector, potentially reopening pathways reminiscent of the ambition that once produced the Avro Aero. For many Canadians, the idea of regaining that level of technological agency carries deep emotional weight. The symbolic value of an independent engine extends beyond what occurs in the air. It affects national psychology. It strengthens the public's belief that Canada can make decisions rooted in its own priorities, even when navigating pressure from large allies. For viewers who remember decades of procurement delays or political interference, the possibility of an aircraft free from foreign constraints represents a refreshing alternative, one that reinforces confidence in Canada's long-term defense direction. Yet while the idea captures imagination, the road toward implementation demands realism. The engineering challenges remain vast. Every system, from power distribution to digital flight controls to weapon integration, would need validation. The Gripen's ability to take off from short runways, operate in freezing temperatures, and relaunch in 20 minutes depends on perfect harmony between airframe and propulsion. That harmony must be recreated with precision. Engineers would need to test the aircraft through thousands of hours of ground simulations and hundreds of flight evaluations, pushing it through extreme heat, deep cold, high altitude, dense moisture, tight turns, and emergency procedures. Nothing could be left unexamined. Despite these challenges, history suggests that technological evolution often begins with such ambitious steps. Nations that choose greater autonomy frequently accept short-term cost and complexity to secure long-term stability. Sweden's entire defense posture reflects this principle. During the Cold War, Sweden refused to depend entirely on foreign systems and designed aircraft that could be dispersed across remote roads, refueled rapidly, and launched without large infrastructure. This mentality shaped the Gripen project from the start. A European engine would simply extend that philosophy into the modern era. For Canada, the benefits of adopting an independent fighter architecture are strategic and enduring. The ability to maintain aircraft in remote northern bases without reliance on foreign-controlled supply chains gives Canada operational certainty. The option to integrate Canadian-made or European weapons strengthens industrial partnerships. The absence of export limitations removes friction when collaborating with allies who may not share the same regulatory frameworks. And above all, a fighter without foreign constraints allows Canada to plan decades into the future with confidence that its fleet will remain adaptable. One must also consider how this decision influences Canada's identity within global defense. A country capable of customizing its fighters without permission becomes more than a buyer. It becomes a participant in shaping technological direction. This elevates Canada's voice in coalition planning, Arctic strategy discussions, and long-term multilateral defense programs. As global tensions increase and Arctic competition intensifies, possessing a fleet tailored specifically for Canadian conditions and controlled entirely by Canadian authority becomes a strategic asset with long-term implications. Gripen E, equipped with a future European engine, would embody something few modern fighters represent: a balance between sophistication, affordability, and sovereignty. It would offer Canada not only supercruise potential, rapid acceleration, and thrust levels ranging from 102 to 120 kilonewtons, but also the ability to shape its own destiny. And in a world where energy, maneuverability, and adaptability define aerial superiority, such a platform would resonate deeply with Canadians who understand the demands of their geography. This is why the idea continues to attract interest. Engineers analyze it with caution and curiosity. Strategists examine how it shifts alliances. Analysts evaluate the political implications. And Canadians, especially those who value sovereignty, and remember what national aerospace ambition once looked like, see in this possibility a chance to reclaim a measure of independence lost decades ago. Ultimately, the heart of a fighter jet is more than a mechanical unit. It is a statement of identity. Today, Gripen E flies with an American heart, strong, proven, reliable. But tomorrow, it could carry a European heart, one designed for freedom, one unbound by foreign restrictions, one aligned with the autonomy that Canada increasingly seeks. Such a transformation would not simply change how the aircraft performs. It would redefine what it stands for. And in the end, this is the true meaning of the Rolls-Royce and Eurojet engine concept for the Gripen E. It is not only about horsepower, thrust, or acceleration. It is about sovereignty. It is about the right of a nation to control the systems that defend it. It is about shaping the next stage of air power in a world that values independence more than ever. For Canada, a country defined by wide horizons and northern winds, the pursuit of that independence is not just strategic, it is symbolic of who the nation chooses to become. Thank you for watching and for spending your time with this deep dive into Canada's future in air power and sovereignty. If you want more content that explains complex defense technology in a clear, meaningful way, make sure to hit the like button. It truly helps this channel reach more Canadians who care about our national security and aerospace heritage. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd be honored to have you join our growing community. Your support allows us to continue producing thoughtful, well-researched videos that focus on Canada's interests, Canada's challenges, and Canada's future direction. Before you go, I'd love to hear your perspective. Here are 3 questions to help start the conversation. Do you believe Canada should prioritize full sovereignty over its fighter jet fleet, even if it requires bold decisions? How important is Arctic capability to you when evaluating Canada's future air power? If Canada could influence the design of a next-generation fighter, what features do you think matter most? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. Thank you again for being here. Stay safe, stay informed, and may you and your families have a strong and peaceful week ahead.